everybody, and welcome to PropTalk, a real estate management podcast that's powered by ResMan. I'm Elizabeth Francisco. I'm the CXO of Inhabit, and I also serve on ResMan's strategic leadership team. And I am your host for today's episode, the pivotal role of systems if you plan to thrive into 25. And I am joined by our very special guest, Sara Hinson. Hi, Sara. Welcome to PropTalk.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, this is going to be really exciting. I know that you wouldn't think that systems administrations is all that, exciting of a topic, because sometimes maybe it sounds a little dry, mostly because people don't understand it. But I promise you, we have a very enticing conversation that we have for you today. And it's going to be, we just might have you excited and thinking about how to fund this role. So Sara is the director of systems at AOG Living. And Sara comes to us with an impressive background, boasting over 23 years of experience in the multifamily housing industry. And not only does she not look it, she don't sound like it either. Because we just talked about that. But what I really have been impressed with as I've gotten to know you over the years is just your passion for property management, and your dedication to enhancing the experiences for your internal stakeholders. And I know because of your experience out on site, external stakeholders as well, on the, even considering your resident interactions, you take so much pride in that. And it shows in the passion you have for everything that you tackle. I think these things have genuinely set you apart in your field because, we get to meet a lot of people. And not that this role's that prevalent, and that's what we're going to talk about. But when we do, your passion definitely stands out. So I've asked her to come in and join us here in studio today to share her insights on, the evolving technology landscape of property management, and also the very important and pivotal role that a role like hers and having someone dedicated to your systems management and strategy, how just important and influential that can be on your success and the success within your organization, for yourself, for your team members, and for your investors. So welcome to the show, Sara.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be with you.
Well, thank you. At first glance, when you hear the words system administrators, director of systems, just systems, I don't think people think it's as sexy as exciting as you and I do.
No, they usually don't. They're just like, what? What do you do? I get that question every day.
Yeah. And there's somebody that's listening right now that's like, did she just use the word sexy? Yes, I did. This has a very important role in your organization. So I thought we'd get started. If you just tell us a little bit about your journey into the role that you have today, because I think it might surprise people, where you've been at in your career to ending up as the director of systems for AOG Living.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much again for having me. I started in the industry like many people in the industry kind of fell into it, right? I didn't grow up saying, hey, I want to be a multifamily, but now, boy, am I glad I am. So when I was younger, I actually was 16 years old. I started as a teenager in the industry.
Oh, wow.
And yeah.
Were you old enough to be hired then?
My mom had to sign a waiver so I could part-time lease on the weekends. So,
oh my gosh.
Yes. So I got to work Saturday and Sundays. I was a manager's best dream, having a steady person on the weekends, right? And so I started in the industry, and my cousin was the leasing director. So he's the one that swooped me in. He's like, oh, you would be great in this industry. So brought me in, and I have been privileged to be able to work throughout the industry and different roles. And among my roles, I went from leasing to assistant. Yeah. While I was an assistant, I had a president who said, you know what, you are just excelling at collections. How are you getting all this extra revenue? How, you're outperforming everybody. Yep. And I really think you would be really great at coming to the corporate office and overseeing all of our extra income and overseeing the platform for everybody to find all that low-hanging fruit, all that extra revenues. And she was the president of the Houston Apartment Association at the time. Oh. So really had an honor to be able to get to see how all of that just inspired me. She was such a great inspiration at that time. And she took the time, and the company I work for took the time to send me to classes I got the privilege to be in the systems world before it was cool, right? Before people even knew that they needed technology people, right?
Before it was a title?
Before it was a title, absolutely. And so I got to go and sit in and train the trainer, and I was sitting in a room full of marketing people, and then here I was being the systems person, should find extra revenue. And so really got to kind of see all of that mold and develop over the years, and it runs very parallel with training. So I got to do systems training and, actual on-site training, and it was really gratifying over the years and in my career path. And sometimes I decided, hey, let me take a step back and go back out on site, maybe, and try that out again. And so I took a step back out on site and oversaw a portfolio, and absolutely loved it. And the opportunity opened up for me to get back in systems, and I took the first chance I had. So I was like, let me get back to this.
Oh, wow.
Because I love the platform side of everything. I find it very fun and intriguing and challenging in the industry.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of people that in that lane, and not a lot of people that understand it today.
Yes. And I would say that just the way that you approach problems and challenges probably aligns very well with a systems role.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right.
You have to be very strategic when you're thinking about systems and platforms and how you're going to tackle a challenge.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to dive into that, but you just said something I thought that was really important, and I don't want to miss an opportunity to dive into that just for 2 seconds. So a little bit of a diversion here, but you talked about being able to work for somebody that was in a role, senior leadership of and serving the industry as HA president, in that exposure to the bigger picture. I would love to maybe understand how you think that shaped your career. And then also talk about just how important it is to invest in our people, because that's what makes this industry so special. And, I love having someone like you on the podcast with us, because when people are listening today, regardless where your role are, where you are in your career, the neat thing about this podcast is that we showcase people that have come from all different places and have so many career options and have done amazing things for themselves, for their family, financially and career-wise. So talk about how that impacted you.
Absolutely. She was very inspirational. I have to give her actually a little shout out, Sue Ann Tinsley. Yes, she's amazing. Yes. And so she took the time and actually invested into me, and sent me to the different HAA training classes and certifications. And I was a part of different teams back then and got to see her actually interact. And that was my first exposure to PAC and understanding all those things, and just watching her on the executive leadership. And I was like, wow, that's really amazing. This is really a career.
Yeah.
And this is really intriguing. And you actually can excel and be somebody in this industry and actually enjoy it. You can actually enjoy what you do. And she exuded joy when it came to multifamily. And I really looked up to that. And she really was an inspiration in this industry. And being a part of the association, it opened my eyes that this is such a great career. And there's not enough people that know about the different associations. And HAA is the best out there, I have to say. Sorry, I know I'm sitting in Dallas right now, but a little shout out
We'll get back to that.
HAA. No.
Healthy competition.
That's right. Very healthy competition. And so, I think it's important for people to get involved, and knowing that, hey, here I am, newer to the industry, just barely an assistant manager, and somebody saw potential and said, you know what, let's take you to the next level. Let's invest in you. And if you invest in your people, the amount of growth you get out of them, it's like watering a plant, right? It's just going to flourish.
Yeah.
And it's really great to see.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I didn't know that's who it was. So I'm not surprised now that you shared. So great words of advice from Sara. And you're actually serving with HAA today, right?
I do. Yes, I do. And my previous employer, she is now the president of the Houston Apartment Association as well. So I've had the pleasure of working with two of the presidents. So I feel like I've had some really amazing, strong leadership. And it just kind of reaffirms that, how important it is to be involved and give back to other people trying to come up into multifamily.
Yep. Yes. you couldn't say it any better. And that's why I asked you to elaborate. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you. And hopefully there's some good sound bites in there for the association. So we definitely will want to share it with them because it is a great story. One of many in this industry. So let's come back and circle back a little bit to talking about your role in particular. So someone who is not familiar with this role, how would you describe it? Like how do you describe this role in property management from your perspective?
Absolutely. So I get it a lot. What is it you do, right? They're super confused and they're like, oh, you're in training. Are you in marketing? You're in operations. What do you do? You're in IT. So absolutely. And so being a system administrator, most management companies call it an array of things. There's not a set title like a regional supervisor or a marketing person or training. You'll hear people, and I find this very interesting when I talk to people at different conferences that are in the same lane, but they have totally different titles, right?
Okay.
And so usually you'll have your different types of programming within the systems platform. And so you have, your help desk. And if you're a smaller organization, your systems person is going to be doing your help desk, doing all of your property onboardings. There is a lot that has to go into your property management systems and all your additional platforms to make sure that onboarding is your best first impression to your client and to the new site staff, right? And so being a systems person, it's making sure that your platforms are running the most efficient way possible. And you really can't have...
That's a key thing that you just said right there. That's the meat of it, right?
Yes.
You're making sure that all your systems are running in the most efficient way possible and that you're increasing utilization because you're only going to get out of something what you put into it. Because I hear you say that.
That's exactly right. And so that's exactly right. And the thing about systems, for somebody who's has absolutely no idea, I kind of explain it like a race car, right?
Okay.
And in the industry, we always hear people, oh, well, you're not going to give somebody the keys to Ferrari, and when they wreck it, you're going to get mad, right? Without training of how to drive that Ferrari. Well, in systems, right, we're the mechanic to make sure that Ferrari is running in top optimal speed for you. And we're constantly making sure that the guardrails are in place, that your tires are running good, and that all your different pieces of your car are actually going to finish the race and that you're going to finish it first, right? And systems requires that. And technology is ever evolving every single day. And when technology is constantly evolving, you have to have somebody to make sure that it's kind of staying in the lane that you need for your management company.
Yes, that makes sense. Okay, so I have to ask, are you a Formula One
Love it.
fan? Do you watch it on Netflix?
Yes.
That's what I'm sitting here, because that's all I'm picturing now. Is every time it's like there's a race car and you're in the pit crew and you're the one managing because you would really think it's the mechanics with the screwdrivers, but no, if you've watched that series, it's whatever's on that monster deck of screens.
Yes.
That's controlling everything that's happening within that race. I
That's
love that
exactly right.
analogy.
Yes.
We're going to have to do something with that. I feel like there's a t-shirt, there's something that's got to come out of that. There's some sort of graphic for property management.
There should be, right? Absolutely.
It's like, we need to work on that. So what would you say are some of the misconceptions about the role?
Absolutely. There's a lot of misconceptions about the role.
Okay.
A lot of people just generalize IT, right? And that would be the same as generalizing multifamily. So you say, oh, well, you're just in multifamily. When you're in systems, oh, you're just in IT, right? But we all know that it's way more specific than that. And so when systems is definitely a different lane, a branch of IT. So I
like that distinction. Say that one more time.
Systems is definitely a different branch of IT. So that is very important to understand, that it's not the person that's going to come fix your computer. It's not that, person that can, figure out, your spam email. I often kind of look and be like, did you turn it off and back on maybe? So, but your systems person is your person watching in the background, making sure that you're adhering to the fair housing laws, keeping up with any type of legislation, right? Or any type of new things that are coming to pass. Making sure, for affordable housing, making sure all the different settings that you have to stay compliant with all the new affordable housing laws coming out. There's a ton. So you really want to make sure that you've got somebody who's paying attention to all those different facets. And the big misconception is, oh, well, you just fix computers. and you could just kind of
Yes.
just make it work,
Mhm.
right? And people always think that it's an instant fix.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it's not in technology,
Mm.
unfortunately. And technology is going to break,
Yeah.
right? And that's a huge misconception too, that it's a set it and forget it industry. And it is far from that. And so that is more so why we need people actually dedicated in wanting to grow into the systems field,
Mhm.
is to learn and help us not have that mentality of set it and forget it. And whoever I hired to do the platform is going to take care of it. And I don't have to think about it again.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Hypothetically, somebody's looking at or considering a role like this. What's your advice about like scale? Like, when does it make sense for a business to do it? That's my first question. I'm gonna hold on to my second one.
Okay, absolutely.
Mhm.
So you have to scale with your business. Obviously, if
Mhm.
you're a small company,
Yeah.
typically I say anything about 3,000 units, you're starting to hit that 15 property mark,
Mhm. Okay.
15 properties, 3,000 units. You're going to need somebody really dedicated in looking at all of that. Now, that person may not be a director of systems type person,
Mhm.
right? But that's perfect opportunity to promote somebody within that really loves systems that you can nurture and that has your company at heart to grow your company and grow your vision and grow your path on the technology front,
Okay.
right? And so that person may be working the help desk, may be helping with your onboardings, going through your financials to see are the teams actually charging everything they should be, finding that low hanging fruit. Right now, in the world of um, higher, insurance and taxes, the
Yeah.
clients, everybody's wanting to find that extra revenue.
Mhm.
And that person is really great, especially when you're starting to get to that 15 properties,
Right.
3,000 unit type mark.
Mhm. So it's making me question if I was looking to fill this role. I think the perception might be that you're looking for somebody that has some sort of technology background, specifically. But based on what I'm hearing from you, it really sounds like the strength in this role is got to be someone with experience,
Yeah.
understanding how people will use the systems and what we're trying to get out of the systems.
I will say that everybody on my team, I'm very fortunate and very blessed to
Mhm.
have a company that understands and knows how important technology is to our organization and to our
Mhm.
vision and to the efficiencies for our clients. And so everybody that's on my team has sat out on site
Okay.
and doesn't really come from a technology background because one of the things you
Because you're
have,
not fixing the technology.
we're
You're
not fixing the technology.
optimizing it.
We're optimizing the technology. We're being the mediator for the technology.
Okay.
And we're really understanding what our on-site teams are going through.
Okay.
And that's really the best side to see.
Mhm.
And a lot of people try to really dig in and find this tech-savvy person that likes to write code or do all these things. And that may not be the best person for you. It really may just be an assistant manager or a leasing agent that's really good at
Mhm.
your system today that really wants to actually pursue that career if you're a smaller organization. If you're a
Okay.
larger organization such as ours, I mean, we have different fractions of our systems team. We have an
Mhm.
onboarding team. We
Mhm.
also have a help desk team. So really having those resources, those dedicated resources for the
Yep.
on-site teams to call somebody
Mhm.
and say, hey, how do I do this? This isn't really working right. And be able to show them because more times than not, when you start getting to those
Mhm.
3,000 unit marks, kind of start really growing, you will find that your on-site teams are yearning for more,
Mhm.
or they're wanting to know how to do things without all the extra help, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes that can be to a company's detriment
Mm.
because they're calling their sister property down the street, going, "Hey, how do you do it?"
Mhm.
And before you know it,
Or they call their property management platform provider and try to get enhancements approved without going through the rest of the company.
this is
That's
true too. This is very true too. I have seen that as well. Yes. But I've seen, site teams call each other and then before you know it, every site's doing it wrong. And then
Yep.
you have to kind of untrain the bad habits, right?
Yep.
So really having that dedicated person is really important for property
Yeah.
management companies.
Yeah. No, and I think you just tapped onto something there about continuity throughout the organization and how important that is. And so this role or roles like this are very, from what you're saying, are very important to accomplishing that across the board.
Absolutely. And having that consistency
Mhm.
and having that consistency of here's how our processes work, I think
Mhm.
that's very important to have somebody that's an advocate on that side of it. That's not training.
Mhm.
That's not ops. And so a lot of times I see people on our side for
Yeah.
the system administrator that also is a regional supervisor, right? Or they're also a trainer. And so
Yeah.
one of the things that I always like to say is that us in the systems as an administrator, we are almost like Switzerland. And so everybody comes to the table, especially with technology. And I found this very interesting,
Okay.
is everybody comes to the table with their own objective. I need X, right? And I need X to happen. And they know it from their way. So like operations may say, I need X to happen. But then accounting will come back and say, well, hold on.
Mhm.
Like if you do X, then Y is going to happen, right? And
Mhm.
you kind of need that mediator in between to say, okay, I hear you and I hear you, but here let's blend it, and here's how we're going to actually accomplish this goal.
Yeah. So basically, what you're saying that was this role, and I hadn't anticipated that, but this is really a key role in reducing friction between back of house and front of house.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
so
And we
often
always want to do that, right?
always want to do that. And if you see a lot of friction between the front of the house and the back of the house, absolutely. This is a good mediator in between
Mhm.
because they have no skin in the game of full ops and full accounting, right?
Yep.
They just are looking at the
Switzerland.
data, right? And data doesn't lie in some cases. But most cases, data doesn't lie. And
Yeah.
you've got somebody that you can depend on that's going to just deliver the
Mhm.
data as it is
Yeah.
and help you see the bigger picture of what actually is going on.
Interesting. No, that's a great point, and I'm glad we ventured down that path. I was thinking about when you were talking about like help desks, um, and thinking back in your past with your past experiences, how significant was it to implement that role? And have you been in a position where a company didn't have it? Well, maybe I should back that up. Have you been with a company that did not have, starting with something simple as a help desk to leading up to your role, and were there to help implement it?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because I think that's relevant for a lot of people who are going to be listening to this, that don't have these things. Because I come across them, sizable companies that don't have this today.
That's right. And there's a lot of companies, and I see that all the time, that they
Okay.
don't have a help desk today. And
Okay.
there's great help desk tools out there for
Mhm.
your teams to track it. When did they put it in? How long is it taking to answer the tickets back? So your teams aren't just sitting out there because they've got a client saying, I need this report or I need
Mhm.
this fixed, and they can't complete a move in, right? And how it happens always at the 10th hour, right?
Yep.
Before reports due. And so not seeing a help desk, there's a lot of analytics behind how detrimental that can be to your bottom line,
Hmm.
right? And you truly see that effect to your people, and they'll have higher turnover rates because they don't feel supported. They don't feel like, it's not necessarily ongoing training,
Right.
but it's somebody to be there to lean on to help them in an immediate
Mhm.
need. And so seeing the implementation of a help desk, it helps really kind of streamline those back operations and the front operations. You see happier leasing agents. We have surveys on our help desk, so we get to see what the feedback is. In addition,
Mm.
we have analytics we actually can give to our training teams and say, here's where the sites are struggling,
Awesome.
and here's where they are. Here's where they are excelling at. So maybe we don't need to touch on this training anymore. We need to focus in this area.
Yep.
And so it really helps see what's happening. And it's not just a help desk for systems,
Right.
right? I highly recommend, we've expanded our help desk to our marketing team, to our training team. So when
Really?
people need training help or marketing help, they're not just sending it to a blanket email or asking a regional. They have empowerment out at the site level to reach out and say, I need help.
Okay.
And so I think that's important for companies to invest in something like that. And it's
Mhm.
as little as $18 a month to run a
Awesome.
help desk.
Okay.
And so I think that that's very important for people to hear that message because they'll see that their team's
Mhm.
data is only good as it's getting input, right?
Yep.
And they'll see better data coming in. They'll see better results. They'll see their P&Ls actually looking a lot cleaner as well.
Yep. Some things never change. The usability of any platforms or any tools that you're using, has a direct impact on garbage in, garbage out. Like,
That's exactly
uh,
right.
I'm glad and sad at the same times that we still have to have that same conversation because, it helps support what we do. But I think there's something to be said for that too, because you guys have been such a great partner over the years with ResMan, and having that help desk helps you understand what challenges your team's having collectively that you've been able to work internally with our teams so that we can help address those also.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it goes back to that partnership and not relying 100% on your technology platform to tell you what's wrong, right? And being proactive and really seeing that information for yourself and having those KPIs is invaluable for your teams and investing back into your teams. It may not be a return that you're seeing on a piece of paper from a physical body coming in the door, but eventually it will be. Because let's say that your leasing, your online leasing goes down over the weekend or during the week, and your leasing teams they're going to be the first ones to know.
Yeah.
And you don't want them to wait to call a regional or call a friend down the street or call, support somewhere else. You want them to be able to put that in right away, get that online leasing back up and running or whatever the case might be so you don't lose out on those leases.
Wow. So how many systems do you manage? Because to clarify, we have Allied or AOG Living. Let me rephrase that. To clarify, AOG Living has a development arm, right, and fee management, owner operator. You're in affordable space. You're pretty much across the board, from what I understand. So, how many systems does that entail for you and your team?
Absolutely. So we are very large. We're actually not just property management. So we are construction. We build development, investment. We are both in the conventional and affordable space, and now the RD space. So we actually touch every facet of multifamily.
We forgot one. SDR? No. What is it? The single family purpose built.
Yeah, BTR.
There we go.
We do have BTR as well. Yeah, so we have it all. Absolutely. Yes. So in order to run all those different divisions and different departments, our team helps with that. So we don't help just with the property management side. Right. And so we run over 147 platforms at my last count, company-wide. Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
So it is a lot between the construction team, HR teams, the accounting teams, between your, property management teams, all the pieces of software that actually take just to operate one property, including our AP automation systems. So there's a lot of systems. If you start to think about it as an owner or operator, that you're like, oh, we have just one system. We run our property management system. You actually don't. You have your payroll system. You have all this technology that powers behind you. And as an operator, if you take a moment just to pause and think and go, what's my health check on it? What's my heartbeat on it? Yeah. You would be surprised to know that it's just, you probably have a lot of outdated updates that need to happen. You have, a lot of newer pieces of it that you can actually be utilizing for efficiencies and optimization. And a lot of people don't. And that's where the systems director comes in, or somebody in systems, or a systems administrator that's constantly keeping an eye on all those different platforms for you. It's not just about leasing and everything else. Multifamily comes full circle. In our company, I'm very fortunate that we come full circle.
Well, and I think back to your Formula One, which we're going to wear that out. But your Formula One reference, that's almost like having this, $1 million race car, and you don't run diagnostics on it.
That's exactly right. And that's why I love the race car analogy, right? Because I used to always say with training, because I love training and I love seeing the light bulb go off in people. But I used to always say, well, you can't just give them the keys to Ferrari and when they crash it, get mad, right? And that's why I use the same analogy for systems. Now that I'm on the system side, is you have to keep that maintenance up, right? And it is a multi-million-dollar asset. And in our case, it can be in the billions. And so do you just want to trust that to chance? And not only that, we are providing a service to people's homes. These are their livelihoods. This is their whole world, that they come home to relax and take that deep sigh. And we're protecting their personal data on a daily basis. And you really want somebody on your system side to be watching out for that. You have a lot of technology partners, and there's a lot of PII data going back and forth. And you're going to start hearing more and more about it, I think, in the industry. And I think multifamily has always kind of been behind the ball on it, right? And so I think we're starting to see more and more companies come to the forefront of understanding how important really putting in those guardrails and managing these assets.
Right. So do you have a when you're thinking about all the systems, where does the risk management fall? Does that fall in in a specific arm of the way that you guys have structured out this arm of the business? Is there like a different, you know, department? Where does that lie?
Sure. We're a larger organization. I mean,
Mhm.
we're over 155 properties at this point and over 30,000 units. So we're very fortunate to be able to have different divisions compared
Mhm.
to somebody who may have 3 or 6,000 units or 10,000 units. And so our risk management is actually its own arm as well.
Okay.
I work very closely with our risk management division,
Mhm.
our insurance. So not only, just going back to that IT, we're a bridge under
Mhm.
the IT arm, but our cyber insurance, right?
Okay.
I help with our cyber renewal policies and understanding the different multi-factor pieces that come along with your technology that you need. And people are going to start seeing these regulations on their cyber renewal policies get harder and harder. And
Mhm.
you really need that advocate for you on your management company to be able to advocate. Here's what we do have, and guess what? They're going to accept license plate readers as part of different things.
Yeah.
So it's really having that person that understands the technology
Mhm.
that blends into your insurance policies is another piece of that
Yeah.
administrator role that we do.
Wow. You just tapped on something, and I'm afraid that was a teaser because this might have to be a separate conversation. With all the talk in the industry about the rising cost of insurance, um, I wonder how that's impacting cyber insurance because everything's going up.
It
It
is
is. So I
absolutely.
would imagine, I just heard somewhere, I can't remember, it was a YouTube video or something about like a local um, sheriff's department
Yeah.
about just how many times that they have an outdated system, to clarify, if I recall correctly, like from the 70s. But they were tracking how many times people tried to hack into their system.
We track it every day. And so we have those analytics every single day. A lot of management companies, you would be surprised how much PII data that we actually hold and handle that do not have those safeguards or protections in place.
Yeah.
And the very sad part is that it could be a company ending event.
Hmm.
And all it takes is once.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the same message as,
Hmm.
hey, you really need somebody who's paying attention to these things
Yep.
and having that insurance because it can be, it's not something that's tangible. It's not a tangible ROI until the event happens, right? And so having somebody who actually looks over that and cyber insurance for the management companies,
Mhm.
you've got your owners out there that really don't carry it a lot, and I encourage them to.
Yeah.
Highly encourage them to, but I'm very always surprised, I guess, to see how many that don't.
Hmm.
But the management companies as well that have to carry these cyber policies and different things, we're seeing huge increases, just like the owners are seeing on their property insurance.
Yeah.
It's all related, and it's just more expenses that are going up for everybody, which is all
Hmm.
more the reason why you really want that system administrator going in and finding any extra revenue you possibly could be missing out on to help offset some of these expenses for you.
Yeah.
Because right now, everybody's trying to cut wherever they can. And
This is not one of those areas.
and this is not one of those areas. Unfortunately, sometimes owners cut training and marketing and systems as some of their first overhead expenses, but those are some of the expenses that actually get you the most returns.
Yeah.
And so definitely want to make sure that you've got those people in place.
Yep. And we'll probably come back to that too, because what we were just talking before we started recording about that phrase that we've heard a million times thrown around the industry in the last, well, probably the back half of the year was, and in most of January. I think I even heard it at the NMHC event up on stage was, everybody's just trying to survive till 25.
Yeah.
And part of that means people really do. And you have to look at expense management. But there will be 26 after 25. And I love that you said earlier, you got to change that thinking and run your business to thrive to
Yes.
25. I might wear that out from her.
Thrive to 25.
Thrive to 25. I
Not
love it.
survive to 25. Thrive to 25.
Yep.
So we're seeing the industry normalize right now.
Mhm.
So absolutely, you got to be the leader of the pack, as you said so eloquently earlier, right?
Yep. And and you're thinking about how you're spending. You can't spend for a short-term problem. You have to think long-term.
And this role is a long-term
Right.
spend.
Mhm.
It is somebody who you definitely will invest in, but they will give you back a greater return in making your clients happy.
Yep.
reducing your employee turnover, making sure that all your integrations, keeping you out of fair housing lawsuits because the setting was set wrong, and really paying attention to all the different things going on right now. I mean, for the industry, I try to keep up with what's going on. I mean, prime example right now, the government's trying to get rid of revenue management.
Yep.
And so that would be a huge hit to our industry. So I'm watching that very closely as well.
Just thinking too about as you're working with your core platforms and the enhancements. That's one of the things that when we think about working with customers with ResMan and any of Inhabit's software products, to be honest, but enhancements are genuinely done to, quote, enhance the user's experience and effectiveness of the solution. And it was really surprising to me over the years to see, as we really spent a lot of time and a lot of money investing into ResMan, the core platform, how many people necessarily hadn't put somebody in a role to stay on top of those enhancements. And it was really, I guess, appropriate timing when we had our first user conference, because a lot of what we were doing and was delighting customers in real time because they didn't even realize some of the things they had at their fingertips that would help them perform better. So somebody in this role too, I'm guessing you have people that are specifically there to make sure that we are making the most out of the products that you're actually paying for.
Absolutely. And that's one of the key points. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, is really making sure and staying focused on how does the platform work for you? How is it working for your management company?
Yep.
No one management company is alike, right? And hopefully we never will be. That's what sets everybody apart in this great industry. And so some of the great things is just watching those enhancement requests. But there's also, different integrations and UIs and UX is always coming out in new feeds, and it may not always be from the ResMan side or the other PMS sides. I work in multiple, as we mentioned earlier, management systems, and so I'll see an integration on one of the other platforms, and it won't feed back into ResMan, and so we have to notify ResMan and say, hey, guess what? They did some upgrades, and ResMan's always been great about going, oh, okay, we'll get this taken care of right away, because we've got an advocate to advocate for us, to constantly be on the lookout of what works best for our business, technology-wise. And technology is changing by the minute.
Yes,
literally.
There's no such thing as taking your foot off the gas.
There is not. There is no set it or forget it button in technology.
And if you're thinking that way, you're definitely going the other direction, whether you realize it or not, and so is your business.
That's right. That's right. And the industry has always been really far behind in technology. And then we had COVID hit, and it really springboarded technology. I think everybody in the tech space was like exhausted after COVID, right? Nobody got a break.
I can relate to that.
Nobody got a break in technology after COVID. And so I think it's actually one of the best things that came out of it was that it put technology on the forefront for multifamily. And so we're hearing some buzzwords all the time, but, it still at least has technology on the forefront, and people are starting to learn that, hey, there are efficiencies, there is optimization that can happen out there. But you can only do that as an organization if you have somebody who is knowledgeable and truly understands the backside of all the platforms. There's thousands of settings on every single platform. And for the owners and operators out there, when you have like a new platform you're exploring or anything of that nature, it's important to have that advocate, not only to sit there and talk about the enhancement requests for you, but also to advocate and ask the questions if it's truly going to work for you. Because at the end of the day, you always have to remember that they're there to sell you a product, right? And so their number one buzzword is, oh, we integrate, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So, you get a regional, they're like, great, they integrate. This is awesome. I want to do it. Let's sign up tomorrow. And then you have somebody who really digs into the backside of it, and you're like, oh, they just pass back and forth the first name.
Yeah.
Everything else is manual. So,
I was going to say, clarification, always ask, are you integrated, or have you just submitted your application to get in the queue to integrate? Because those are very different things.
They are.
Speaking on our behalf.
Yes. And what level of integration, right? There's different levels of integration, and really understanding what part and asking what part is actually still going to be manual for the teams. That always is a big trigger for me, right? Because when we're looking at new products or new platforms or anything, we're always asking, how is it going to affect my associates, right? And their day-to-day processes.
Yep.
How is it going to affect the residents? And how is it going to affect our bottom line? Those are the three things I always ask myself when somebody's trying to introduce something new. I'm trying to put myself in the property's position and say, how is this going to affect them? Is this really going to help them, or is it going to be us trying to shove another platform down the property's throat?
Well, it's funny that you just said that because I have some questions I wanted to ask. Talk about like being in sync for transitions. That leads me to one of my big questions, which is focused around change management.
Yeah.
Because this is a hurdle, I think, for every organization. And so I would love to get your perspective on how do you manage expectations, and how do you have what I like to call change champions, which is one of my favorite little slogans.
Yeah.
Because everything changes. Why not be a champion of it and get in there and lead and take it, take the bull by the horns. But I'm just curious from your perspective and, maybe your experiences just over time, what does that look like? Like, how do you do it well?
Absolutely. And so I love change. And so it is important to have change champions, right? And especially in an organization that's been around a really long time, you get a lot of people that are really we've always done it this way. And so that I'm like, okay, look,
I've
great.
never heard that from anyone in accounting ever.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I've never heard that from anybody in the industry ever. We've always done it this way. I'm like, okay, let's just completely rewrite the script. So I love change. And so being an opportunity for change, you have to kind of be very, you have to think about it and be very thoughtful about your approach. And some of the things you have to get buy-in from the executive team first. Before you ever even go out and feel out and say, do I think this is going to work for the site teams? You actually have to get buy-in. That is a big part of change, right? And you have to have people ready to buy in on whatever type of change you're trying to transform. In addition, you have to think about all the different things I just mentioned, right? How does it affect the associates? How is it going to affect my residents? How is it going to affect our bottom line?
So to that point, you went a little bit different direction, but I love the direction that you went. So if we think about in your role and as you're assessing what's best for the business and what systems you need to invest in or enhance, or maybe you've got ones that you just need to move away from, how do you take that to the executive team? Like, what is your thought process? What is it that you need to bring to the table to be heard?
Absolutely.
I would imagine that's a challenge for people who maybe have never done it and don't know how to do it.
It can be very scary for people who have never done it or never had to sit down and actually go, okay, wait a second, we're about to make a huge company decision or a big change to our organization. And you really got to gather your facts first, right? Understand what is it that you're trying to actually accomplish, and then understand how is that message going to be heard and have your facts to back it up, plus the cost, right? What is going to be the financial impact to the company on the good side and the bad side? So you have to be prepared to talk about the devil's advocate as well for any type of change, because you will always have your naysayers, and you have to be ready to overcome those objections out the gate. And I think that's really important when you're talking about change, is to be able to, overcome any type of objection and really sit down and have an honest conversation. And having honest conversation doesn't happen enough in our industry, unfortunately. And it may not always be what you want to hear, but it may be what's best for the organization. And so being able to communicate that and have the data to back it up is always very important.
Yeah. And I know, and to you, because I know your organization so well, Pardo's not that scary. I don't know if he wants to be, but he's not that scary.
He's amazing.
So I was going to say, you guys are pretty forward thinking. God bless, because thank you. You're one of our early adopters, and it's been a wonderful relationship and true partnership. Like I don't know if I got my T-shirt for this year. I'm just pointing that out.
We can make that happen.
I have
but
a
we
few.
do love ResMan.
I was like, I do have my old T-shirt ResMan stack, and I actually have like 2 or 3 from Allied Orion. So, but in thinking about when you're in that moment and you're presenting your ideas, one of the things that I'm sure you've come across is if you don't make change, like what are you leaving on the table?
Right.
And I would imagine that's part of that conversation. But I would imagine for those who dig their heels in because we've always done it this way, is there any advice you have for someone about how to help them see how to get past that particular objection?
Absolutely. It's challenging to deal with somebody who always digs into their heels, right? But I find it a great challenge, right? And so what you want to do is just sit down and help that person understand. I hear you, right? However, here's some ways that we can improve your daily functions, your daily life. And
Mhm.
here's actually what's going to happen. And let me show you. And you have to take it much slower
Mhm.
with people like that to get their buy-in. You cannot just say, well, we're doing it and we're moving on, right?
Right.
If you do that, you're going to set up for failure.
Mhm.
And so really taking the time, helping them understand it, and walking them through the benefits for them. And they may not always see their own benefits because they've had blinders on and they only see it in their direction. And
Mhm.
truly understanding the backside, and that's why it's always good to pull people as a system administrator from property management because they can see it from their perspective as well. So you
Yep.
get that great two-sided thought process that
Yeah.
comes along with it.
Yeah. No, that's great. Okay, so then moving to the property side,
Hmm.
right? Because they've also been known to dig their heels in and be resistant to change. How do you how do you get them excited and how do you turn them into change champions?
So yes, properties, they're like, I don't have time for this. I don't want to do it.
Corporates just rolling something else out on top of
They're
us.
rolling out another thing. We don't have time for it. Yes, we hear it all the time, and smaller organizations feel it too, right?
Mhm.
And it really comes from the buy-in again at that executive level. Their supervisors coming in and telling them, "Hey, this is really great." You also want to find a champion that loves change out at the property level that can spread that champion change joy,
Mhm.
right? That's a big word there. Champion change joy throughout the other properties because if they see somebody else that's successful,
Mhm.
pilot it. Don't just roll it out. I highly recommend a pilot
Okay.
and pilot it at one or two or maybe five communities, depending on your size, and let them be that champion and say, hey, this is really cool. And when other managers or other leasing agents or other assistant managers hear that message, they
Mhm.
get excited as well. And they're like, oh, and then you see the natural buy in. And I
Okay.
think that's really important, especially from a systems
Yep.
perspective, because they just, at this point, I think everybody after COVID, they're like, here's another technology platform I have to log into
Yes. It's a lot of there was a lot of quick adoption and unfortunately not a lot of time for analysis,
or testing.
or testing. And so I think, we've seen and I think we've benefited from, our own base that maybe or people that have come into our base because they jumped on something that really wasn't the right fit and put their teams through that. And it's really interesting too to see once if you've made a bad decision, right?
Hmm.
Nothing's perfect, but maybe when it's all said and done, you're on a platform that or an app or whatever it is, and if it's painful, having the courage, I would think, to pull back. Have you ever been in that situation where it's like, okay, because that's got to be a tough conversation to go ahead and have with your executive team.
Absolutely.
Like,
And
we've spent
that's,
this money, we've spent this time,
yeah,
so the instinct is going to be, we need to stick it out.
yeah. And, I've been there. I absolutely can relate to that. And it's always important to have, you're investing a lot of money in these platforms,
Hmm.
in all of your startup fees, in all the employee time,
Hmm.
all of these things. And so, again, why you want that champion there for you, but also sometimes they don't go well.
Hmm.
Sometimes there's things that have been promised that aren't delivered and things that are there that aren't. And you have to be prepared to go in and have those difficult conversations and say, listen, this is not being delivered what we said it would. We're
Hmm.
not getting the adoption we said we would. How do we want to address this?
Yep.
And cutting off that expense early, then trying to write it out, trying to fix it, you have to be ready to pull the plug or
Mm.
have those difficult conversations, not just with your executive team, but also with their providers
Yep.
and working through that as a partnership.
Yep.
Because it's not always just point the fingers and blame game, right?
Right.
Because I feel like as a true systems administrator, you are in partnership with every single one of those platforms.
Right.
And you want to be successful, so that means they need to be successful. And so you have to have honest communication with your platform providers
Yep.
as well, even if it's not what they want to hear, just like your executive team.
Yep. No, and I think that's a great point. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things is, okay, we started down the path. This isn't right for the organization. And I think understanding the long-term impact from staying with it is important. Obviously, that's a bottom line up front, like when you're going to have that conversation. But I think from a senior leadership role, you also have to create a culture and environment where if we fail together and we fail forward.
That's right.
Right. So that's
You
that's an
learn from
important
your
part of it.
mistakes.
Yep.
And
Amen.
and so in technology, you have to learn from your mistakes. Will
Yep.
you always get it right? Absolutely not. Will technology always be right?
Yep.
Absolutely not. But you got to learn from it.
Yep.
And a good systems administrator for you will help you guide through that and get through that.
Okay. Awesome. Great. That was a great insight. So I'm thinking about as your role has developed over the years or as you've moved, because I know the role that you have today with AOG Living, but you also have had this role previously in other organizations. So I'm curious about like, what's the biggest change that's happened over time, like up to this point, you would say?
hmm
Um, and then take that a step further about how do you see that role needing to change, say, in the next 5 years?
Absolutely. So when I started out as the low hanging fruit getter, right? I
Mhm.
was the fruit collector, trying to find all that extra revenue and see where we were missing out on extra pet fees, or
Right.
was there a system that we could implement that would actually help generate more revenue, like
Right.
your amazing pet screening company.
Mhm.
So there's different things out there that you can do to get all those extra revenues. And really, the initial role started out for me in that lane of helping with closeouts, going through different closeouts, going through
Okay.
different reports, and really understanding what the site teams were doing, or are they missing putting in their guest cards?
Right.
Is there,
Or not charging their fees
or not
or
charging their fees or different things of that nature. Absolutely. And so, really evolving from that to now looking at API codes and making sure all of the different integrations work and working in tandem with the training teams and really getting analytic focused and BI
Mhm.
focused and understanding the data
Mhm.
and the analytics behind the performance of our associates.
Mhm.
And I'm able to now produce analytics that I can give to our executive team, to our VPs, and say, here's how your portfolio is performing in leasing and occupancy and views and any type of area that they want to look at, delinquency, we can change it and
Mhm.
look at all these different analytics. And so, really allow the operators to free up from going, how do I find this report? The owners are asking me all these questions. How do I dig in? And they can come to us and say, hey, my client wants to know X, Y, and Z. How do I get this report to show them that?
Mhm.
And we're able to produce these type of analytics. And I think that KPI and analytics have come such an
Yes.
amazing leap from when I started to now.
Yes, they have.
I think that it's
And
almost
specifically in the last, what, 5 years? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially the last 5 years, the
Yeah.
different analytics
Mhm.
and different KPIs that you see in all platforms,
Mhm.
whether it be on the accounting side or the HR side or the management side. The analytics have just been really eye opening,
Okay.
how much they've evolved. And I think for the future of systems and
Mhm.
technology and where I see it going is that we're really going to be shifting. We're hearing a lot of trigger words such as AI.
Mhm.
That's a big one. Everybody's like AI, centralization, and fraud. Some of those
Oh.
big hot points that I'm hearing in the industry. And I think there's going to be a big focus on all three. And I think they're all going to kind of be related
Mhm.
in the industry on the system admin side as well. You've got your AI piece that is ever evolving, right?
Mhm.
And it is growing by the day. And so there's a lot of that's a whole nother topic.
Mhm.
But you're seeing this AI piece and how we're using it for screening. People are using different AI pieces today and they may not even know it,
Yeah.
right? And really watching the fair housing behind that. I think
Yep.
that our roles as a system administrator is really watching the ethics
Mhm.
behind AI.
Mhm.
And also, I think it's going to morph into the fraud piece as the
Mhm.
AI photo generators and imitators are getting better and better. And right now, people can generate whole new lives, basically. And now they can actually sound like you, they can look like you. And I
Yeah.
think that is going to become even more mainstream.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, and I think that that's going to have a direct effect on multifamily in dealing with fraud. And there's some really great fraud pieces out there today. We use one, Snapped.
Yep.
And so there's some really great fraud pieces, but every day they're evolving and figuring out how to actually even get better.
How to
And
outsmart the systems that
how
we're
to
trying to put in place.
That's exactly right. And again, that's why, I think
Mm.
having that system administrator and then bringing the centralization, the other piece of that AI is everybody saying, oh, well, I can just eliminate bodies,
Hmm.
right? And that's really not the case. I personally don't feel that AI is this big revolution that's going to
It's
allow
not the
you.
silver bullet everyone thinks it is.
I definitely don't think it's a silver bullet everybody
Are you
thinks it
sure that
is.
was the message at OpTech?
Yeah, I was sitting there a little bit disagreeance with all of that. Absolutely. I don't think that you're going to be able to come in and just get rid of your entire leasing team. I think there's always going to have to be a human element to technology.
Mhm.
And I think that you're again going back to our Formula One race car. Having those guardrails and those safeties in place and doing those health checkups is the
Mhm.
algorithms in the way that it's actually teaching itself, staying in those fair housing guardrails. Is it
Mhm.
actually giving a better human interaction?
Mhm.
It won't at the end of the day. It may get smart enough to, and people are really terrified of that. I think it will get there, but I think that you're going to have to still have that human element. And I think systems is going to have to play a pivotal role in proving that you still need that human element with all the analytics.
Yeah.
And even if you do go to centralization, still keeping some of that human element, maybe not as full, right?
Mhm.
Maybe AI replaces that half body you need
Mhm.
because the age old problem, you say one person for every 100 units, right? And we
Mhm.
all just kind of roll our eyes because we're like,
I'm older than you. That's been the same number since I started in the 90s. You
absolutely.
at some point you thought that would have changed.
And it still hasn't. It still hasn't. And so I think everybody's, the demands on our on-site teams and everything, I think AI will enhance it.
Mhm.
Centralization will enhance it, but it will not replace it.
Yeah.
And same goes with the technology. You're always going to have that human interface. So I really think that's where systems is going to be looking to in the next 5 and 10 years. I think that's where our
Mhm.
focus is going to be.
Do you see any AI advancements in as a tool for what you're doing in your role in systems?
Absolutely. I think that there are some really great AI enhancements I hope to see in the future. And if
Uh-huh.
anybody develops it, I want part of it. No, just kidding. But I'm really hoping that there are some enhancements in how you onboard a property, right?
Mhm.
That is a first impression to a client. How
Mhm.
quickly can you get your systems on board? How quickly can you get everything going?
Right.
And that's a first impression to the new employees out on site as well,
Mhm.
right? And so you only get one chance to make that first impression. And I hope and would love to see AI actually automate a lot of that processes,
Yep.
right? And be able to just get smart and be able to go through and say, here's what we need to
Yep.
do, because it's always it's never the same. It's
Yep.
never the same thing that's going to be happening on every single onboarding. The other piece is really the growth of AI to train or enhance our employees
Mhm.
to be able to walk them through different experiences, to be smart enough to say, hey, um, here's my maintenance work order, right?
Mhm.
We see a lot of people using AI
Right.
already in the maintenance realm
Mhm.
and asking the better questions and really drilling in. And I see that also on the training side. AI really diving into training our maintenance techs. How do you wire a HVAC unit, right?
Yeah.
We're struggling to get employees into the industry right now, really bad. And we need a tool to teach people from the ground up how to work on these different things. And I think AI might be a piece and a big part of that.
Yep. Well, not only are you here for CAB, I believe you even mentioned listening to Nick Olson's podcast. So what a coinky dink.
Yeah,
You might just be in the vicinity of the very person who's working on the new AI platform. I'm thinking you should sit next to him at dinner
I
just
think
to make
so.
sure we're on the right track.
Yeah, I definitely will ping him for some AI
Yes.
pieces.
Yes. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, but you should definitely make just to double check. But I'm thinking too, like even past that, like you said, you have 150. Is that what you said?
We're over 155 properties now.
Right.
Hmm.
No, systems that you're managing.
Oh, yeah, almost 150.
Yes.
Yes.
So thinking about tools, um, where AI might be able to help you manage those platforms is something
Absolutely.
that I would think as more and more technology, well, we have so much technology, and we're not the only vertical out there in the business world that has a lot of technology. But I think that, sometimes it feels like we're getting back to a place, and it specifically, I think, has to do with back office, where how much time are you spending in the toolbox, right?
Yes.
Versus using the tool, like organizing the toolbox, understanding what's in the toolbox. And at the end of the day, you need to be able to effectively use your tools.
Right.
So, hopefully we'll see some advancements there that are, tools to help people managing multiple systems. Not that I'm
Absolutely.
not throwing that out there into the universe, but, speak it out there.
Yeah. Put it into existence. Let's make it
Yes.
happen.
Yes.
Let's get that change going.
Yes. Let's make it happen. So my last questions, I think, for you are just really to wrap it up is what advice would you have to someone who's looking? I mean, you're obviously a proponent, but what advice would you have to the executive team that may be hearing this podcast that doesn't have this in place today? Where do they start, and what advice do you have for them to embrace this?
To embrace adding a systems administrator to
Or
their
roles? Yeah.
and add that to their roles. I absolutely can't even say it fast enough. Do it. Do it, do it, do it. So it will help you so tremendously to manage and streamline your processes, create that continuity throughout your organization. And maybe you're not big enough, to go
Okay.
out and actually find somebody who's actually already done it. Invest in your people, bring somebody up that really
Okay.
loves it, send them to training. There's tons of training and courses, and the different PMS systems love system administrators and
Yes, we do.
and showing them what they need to do and teaching them and bringing them in. And again, a big recommendation is bring them from the management side. Don't really go out and look for somebody in tech. That's great. But really look for somebody that does come from that operator side.
So to that point,
Mhm.
and there's a specific reason I'm asking, and hopefully this person, there's somebody in particular out in the market that I know that brought this up. You think, and you decide you need to go down this role, and you bring someone up because you've never had the role, not really sure how to inspect what you expect. So what would you say if I'm filling this role in the next 3 months, right? What is like the key areas to start with? Like
Absolutely.
where do you really like
Hone in.
Yeah, because you can't do everything, right?
You
So,
can't.
like, what are the 3 things that would be the most impactful for somebody who doesn't have this role today? Like, where would that person start?
I think that person would start on the help desk,
Okay.
creating a help desk, having a pivotal point for your team members to be
Okay.
able to call in when they need systems help,
Okay.
when they need help doing whatever. That way you start creating that continuity. I think that's position number 1. Position number 2 is have them start learning the analytics behind the systems.
Mhm.
I think have them start getting used to sending you reports of how are you performing. So, we might have them help you create your watch list
Mhm.
because they'll start learning the data and
Mhm.
what actually creates that data.
Mhm.
And then a good systems person is going to go, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. Let me dig in to find out why.
Mhm.
And that's where we usually see the best system administrators is the ones that love to dig in. We love to research, we love to dig in,
Mhm.
and we really like to find the root problem or
Mhm.
the root challenge. I think, and then the other piece of that is somebody who is not afraid of change,
Mhm.
and really making sure that they're communicating with your on-site teams or your regional teams and hearing and listening where do they struggle and
Mhm.
start there. Like if your teams are struggling with getting, their leases in the system, start with the basics.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the industry, there's all these great fancy things we always talk about doing, but a lot of people forget about the basics. And if everybody just got back to the basics, you would potentially outperform all of your competitors because so many people have forgotten about the basics.
Yep. Well, they always say the true test of management and your management skills is how you manage at a downturn, not how you're managing through the upcycle.
That's right. And we're definitely coming out of that downturn. But yes, it will be very steady
Yeah.
Eddie this year, is what's projected. So thrive to 25 and really try to have, somebody who's there to help you set that expectation. But if you are considering this and you're kind of on the fence, please give me a call. I'll be more than happy to share, all
Awesome.
the different experiences. But definitely, it's well worth the investment. You will see the return.
Mm. Yep. I love that. So I think she just gave you guys the nugget that you needed to thrive till 25. If you don't have someone in charge of your systems, there's no better time to start than today.
That's
So
right.
thank you for sharing all your great wisdom. You did great. I was like,
Thank you.
I don't know. I think she made it kind of sound fun and sexy. I'm just saying. I'm like, I would want to go hire somebody just like you today.
No.
So mission accomplished. Anyway, guys, we just want to say thank you for tuning into Prop Talk. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. And drive till 25. Bye, guys.